Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about the changes that occur in marriages after having kids, how having kids can be a refreshing avenue for self-reflection, and how children adapt the things that are being modelled to them by the grown-ups around them. But before we get into that, Sammy, what's been fueling you up this week?
Ooh, like most people, we had a couple of days off over the Easter break.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, it was really nice. And we crammed like a month's worth of dates into the 4-day weekend.
It kind of helped that it worked out with our date rhythm, that my date lined up for the first half of the month and yours lined up for the second half, and that weekend spanned both, so we were able to cram them in.
Yeah, so we went to the carnival or the fete or the fair and did some rides and food and animals and, yeah, all the good stuff on Easter Good Friday.
Yeah, so that was my date.
Yes, thank you for hosting and organising.
No worries.
Yeah, and then we also had a little brunch date and tried out one of our new local cafes. Yeah. And we went for a harbour cruise and we went dancing.
That was a little bonus date, wasn't it? That wasn't really planned in, but it just happened that we managed to get some tickets.
Yeah, and then we also went to the basketball and unfortunately my team lost, but Nathan's team won.
Yeah, we went to a basketball match where both of our teams were playing, so
against each other.
Against each other, yeah. So that was a bit of fun, a little bit of rivalry there, but
and I was so confident too. I was so cocky going in, thinking that we were going to smoke you, and that is not what happened.
It was a good game though, good tight game, but it's not the outcome you're after.
Yeah, and then also in amongst that, we had some downtime at the beach because the weather was just beautiful for mid-autumn and we're still got beautiful sunny days. Yeah. So all in all, it was a lot of fun and play and leisure over the last couple of days that really helped fuel up some of my fuel tanks.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today and for every episode of Date Forever. But today we have something we would love to invite you to. So from time to time, we host guest workshops where we have special guests come along and teach and share something in their expertise. And we've got one coming up very soon. So in early May, we have one of our podcast guests returning to do a bit of a deeper dive workshop. So Brian Fretwell is a communications expert. And if you've had a little stalk of him on TikTok, he's got like a butt ton of followers. So we're really looking forward to hanging out with him and talking about how we can have better conversations and how better conversations can lead to a better relationship. So if you ever find yourself like falling into the same sort of patterns of like asking, how was your day? Or, you know, not really getting past the surface level of reporting on what you did each day. And, you know, you're talking about what happened when and where, but not really like how you felt about that or your experiences or your emotions or what you're striving for. This might be a really good opportunity to come and level up some of those communication skills. As you would know, almost all of our guests say that communication is the key to a thriving relationship, and yet we're never taught these skills. We never go to communication 101 class. So we would like to invite you to a workshop about better communication. It is going to be a power hour. Brian is going to blow our minds. So this workshop is really for couples who are engaged, thinking about getting engaged, or newlywed. Or if this is something in your relationship, an area of your relationship that you know needs some work.
So to grab your tickets, head on over to fuelcollective.com.au/events. But now, here's this week's guest.
Today we've got Aliza Said joining us. She is a grateful wife and proud mama. Aliza is a certified mama marriage coach who guides new mamas to reconnect with their husbands even in the messiness of motherhood. With experience as an educator, birth doula, and massage and reflexology practitioner, Aliza brings a holistic, wholehearted, yet grounded approach to creating the relationship you dream of. She's the host of the new Mama Marriage Bliss show, and we are stoked to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Hey, so you're on a show about relationships. I reckon the place that we start is tell us a little bit about you and your relationship status.
Okay, so I am happily married almost 11 years. And our story really started very like we did not expect to meet each other at that time of our lives. I was a dorm counselor and my husband was also a dorm counselor. And here in Israel where we live, it's like very normal that there's a counselor in a high school. And my brother was actually in that high school where he was a dorm counselor. And he decided that he's the best thing that ever happened to him. And he called me up one day and I wasn't even thinking about going out at all at that time. And he's like, you have to go out with him. He's the most amazing person. And he's Argentinian and he's really good at soccer. So I was like, okay, great. Let's go out. Why not?
All the traits you want. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, what else do I need? So we went out and it was kind of crazy because it was like very for sure from the beginning. Like I never even doubted myself or asked myself. And I didn't have so much time to do that because after a month and a half, we already got engaged. And a few months later, we were already married. And we always say like, that's crazy because you could have been a serial killer and I wouldn't have known it. But, but thank God it was the best decision. And I'm a very indecisive person, or I was. So I feel like something just like pushed me in because it was so right from the beginning. And I'm so grateful for that really quick and crazy decision that we made.
So what made you make that decision so quickly and so crazy quickly?
I really feel like there's nothing logical I could say about it. Like there was something that really, it was just like, even the truth is after our first date, I called up my mother and I said to her, I'm going to break it off. Like I'm not going out on another date. She's like, why? So I said, no, he's way too good for me. He deserves something so much better. And it's not fair if I continue going out with him. And I didn't know that at the same time, he wanted to break off. He wanted to stop going out after the first date because he was just going out. He had so much stuff going on in his life at that moment. And he was like, okay, I'll give it one more chance. And then he says that on the second date, he decided that he was going to marry me. For me, it was kind of like from the beginning, I knew that there was something really special there. And I don't have something logical to say. There was something inside that we both felt it. And as a coach, I usually say, don't just go with your emotions. But there was something just very much intuitively right and completing between us.
Yeah.
So in that, well, let's say those first few dates must have been like 10 out of 10.
Well, the first one for my husband, I guess, wasn't because he was going to also break it up. I don't know. There was just something very, very real and genuine. And we like really quickly got into the really deep conversations. Also, as an Orthodox Jew, there's no physical touch before you get married. So that kind of clears up like you have to get into the really deep conversations in order to get to know each other. And there's nothing that's blocking that. So that definitely also gives us a big jump start into the really deep conversations. And like you're headed straight to marriage and you have to check if that's going to be right. And it was just very real and genuine. And yeah, I guess you could say 10 out of 10.
Were your respective families on board with early engagement and then getting married quite quickly?
So they both thought we were crazy, which we kind of are, yes. After, I think it was like the third time we went out or something, both parents wanted to know the other person because they were a little nervous about it. But then we also knew like families and knew people around. It wasn't like he was a complete stranger. Like my brother knew him and his family and he knew my family from other places. So it wasn't like, so they kind of thought it was a little crazy in the beginning, but once they got to know each other, they were very on board. And until today, thank God, a very supportive family.
So I would love to know what the transition from school camp counselor, dorm room attendant to what you do now. Like, tell us that story.
Okay, well, I've gone through a lot from then until today. After being a dorm counselor, I then learned education and I have a bachelor's in education. I was a teacher for a long time. We worked in the community in Uruguay. We came back to Israel and I was an assistant principal for a while. When we were in Uruguay, we went through a really, really tough patch in our marriage and things were really difficult. I was probably suffering from postpartum depression that wasn't diagnosed at the time. And we had a really, really hard time. And through those years that we got out of that really hard patch and we turned our relationship into something even more beautiful than it was before, that we thought it was like the best thing that could ever happen. So I really, from that time, had like on my heart a desire to help other couples. And it was something that we were doing in Uruguay naturally. And it really became like a passion of mine, that I knew how bitter it is when it's bitter. And I know how sweet it is when it's sweet. And I want other people to be able to taste that. And then as an assistant principal, and I had that like sitting on me and knowing that that's what I was going to do one day. And then as an assistant principal, I remember it very clearly. It was parent-teacher conference and I was sitting there and waiting for each couple to come in for me to talk about their daughter or son, whatever. And I remember so clearly, like looking at each couple that came in and seeing exactly patterns that came out in their children. Now, obviously, our children are not exactly who we are. But like one of the students that we were having such issues with communication and with the acceptance of others. And then I saw their parents walk in and I saw the dynamics between them. And it was very clear to me why there was such communication issues and why she had such a hard time accepting. Because when you're modeled in your life all the time, those kind of communication patterns, then that's the only thing you know. And that's what you grow up on. And that day, I remember I said to my husband, I am going to change motherhood, the way that a mother sees herself and her kids and how she relates to her husband. It directs directly to her children. And as you guys say, good relationships is going to make a better world. I feel like that's the linking piece. Like as parents, we are raising the next generation. We are leaders essentially of the world. And we are raising the children that are going to lead the world after we leave. And the only way that they're going to do it with connection and with love and with peace and with compassion is when they witness it between us. And that was the day I came home to my husband. I was like, I'm going to do this. It's like, you go for it. And then it took me a little time. A few months after that, my son, who was a baby at the time, he was a year old, he had a medical emergency. I was in the ER the whole night. And I remember just like thinking, oh my gosh, this is such a shakeup and a wake up call for me to go and do what you want to do. And that month I left my job as an assistant principal. I signed up to learn to be a certified coach. I certified to be a coach and I started my journey. And in the beginning, I actually was a little afraid to go into the whole relationship thing. I was like, oh, I'll just do motherhood. And it just kept going back to there. And it kept going back to the relationships, and who you are as a person is so much because of the relationships you have around you. And that's how I am where I am today.
Wow.
Amazing.
So tell us a little bit about what you do now and who you specialize in helping.
So what I do now is I mainly coach one-on-one with new mothers. And when I say new mothers, I mean like the early ages of children, because that really is when the motherhood is like very much dependent on you physically and you feel very overwhelmed by, I like to say like you're drowning in dishes and diapers and you feel like there's nothing, you can't see over all the day-to-day things that you have to do, and who has time to connect to their husband and all that. And there's so many changes that go on with a mother. I'm also a birth doula, so I get to see these changes in all different ways. And when a mother is born, when a baby is born, it's not just a baby that's born. It's a mother that's born. It's a father that's born. It's a relationship that is a completely new relationship now. We're not just a couple now. We're now parents. And I know that in today's world, that seems really scary. And I have spoken to many of my students who today are married, that they're really afraid to jump into that stage, because there's something also in our culture that really talks about how once you get married, once you have children and you're married, then you could say goodbye to your marriage, because like that's kind of it. And then you're just in the children, and okay, when they leave the house, you'll be back. But that it doesn't have to be that way. And my mantra for myself, and that I always say also to my clients, is that motherhood and marriage is the most epic self-development journey. And there's no reason that it should be doomed because of children. I personally believe that the opposite is true. The children just add another aspect to self-reflection and to really have to dive deep into things and to really have to learn to prioritize the important things. And when you're able to really use it as a pedestal to growth, then not only is it beautiful, but it keeps on advancing you and your children and the world to a better place.
Yeah, amazing. So you mentioned that you had kids yourself and that you were going through a pretty tough time kind of in your relationship at that time too. So how did having kids affect your relationship?
How does kids not affect a relationship? I think that, look, kids affect everything. Let's talk first about me as a mother, right? It affects my identity. Who am I? Am I just someone who has to take care of this child? I'm stuck in, right now, I'm actually 2 months after having a new baby. And you're kind of like inside the four walls of your house. And do I have any other connections outside? Do I have any other purpose besides just being this caretaker of this being that sometimes I don't even feel so connected to in the beginning? It changes. My career is different because, well, right now I'm not even working, and it changes who I am as myself. My body image changes completely. Everything changes about who you are. And the relationship also changes so much because all of a sudden there's so many more demands. You have so many more things that you have to add to your to-do list. And it's like without kids, there's enough to do. And then once they're kids, there's so many more things. And I like to always say that it seems that when you're parents, that everything is less. You have less energy, you have less time, you have less of everything.
Less sleep.
Less sleep, exactly. Talking a mama of a newborn. But actually, when there's less, so you can't look just at the quantity and you have to really, really look at the quality of things. So it forces you as a couple to really direct your energy to the right places. So you have to really think, what are the things that fuel us, as you guys say in your world? What are the things that fuel us up as a couple? We can't spend our time on the things that we're not sure or what. No, let's be really exact. And another thing that really makes things easier is I'm so into simplicity. Like when you're a parent, you have to go for simplicity. Like don't look for, I actually heard you saying in one of your introductions that you said you wanted to like do something and it wasn't going to be 100%. I don't remember exactly what the example was. And you're like, well, we're going to do it even if it's not 100%. And that's exactly what it is with parents. Like you can't expect everything to be exactly how it was before. What is romance? Romance is a flow. What romance is today for me and what it is tomorrow, they might be completely different things, especially when parenting, because the seasons of parenting changes so fast that the way that we are going to be romantic together is going to change all the time. So how does parenting change your relationship? In so many different ways. And it changes you from the inside, that it makes you have to keep looking at yourself and at your relationship and say, okay, at this season of time, how are we going to make our relationship the priority? And it like kind of forces you to keep on checking in at different seasons of time.
Aliza, I would love to know. So obviously deciding to have children in itself is a really big decision. It's not one that you can undo. There's no U-turn from deciding to become a parent. You become a parent. So are there some conversations that you would encourage couples to have before they make that decision or before they make the jump past that decision?
Absolutely. But before answering the question, I want to say that I would really like to erase culture's understanding that marriage is doomed after you have kids. Will it be harder? Yeah, at times. But every marriage is hard at times and every marriage has its challenges. So before answering that question, I think that we have to leave from a place of understanding that marriage can be even better after having kids. And it's when you have the right tools and you have the right toolbox for your marriage that you're able to really make your marriage even better after having kids. It's like I just told my eldest daughter, I just had my 5th kid. So when So when I had my 5th now 2 months ago, I said to my oldest daughter, every time I have a baby, it's like my heart gets even bigger and there's more room for love and there's more love for everyone. So when we're able to learn how to expand our heart that way and be able to even have more love in our heart, it's not just more love for the baby, it's learning how to use that more love for our husbands as well. It's learning how to live in life with a higher energy of love. So what conversations should we have before deciding to have children? I think it's important, just like any conversation, to understand what the root is of the conversation really. What is essentially going on? I think I like to do very simply, just do a pros and cons. Like take out a paper and write down why yes, why no. But then after you write down the why yes and why no, you have to dig deeper and understand what is underlying each one of those yes and no. Like, I'm not going to have enough time for my own passions. Okay, why? What are you afraid of? That you're going to dwindle down and lose yourself? Okay. Then what will that look like with kids? What will it look like with kids not dwindling down and losing your passions? Maybe I'm afraid that we're not going to communicate any. Like, once you take what I'm afraid of and what I do want, and you see what the underlying of that is, then I think it's a whole new conversation, and it's a completely different conversation. And it's a conversation that will teach us so much about ourselves and about our relationship, not even about kids, just like any conversation, right?
That's a very practical pros and cons list. Get out a notepad.
Absolutely.
So Nathan and I, in our friendship group, we are the minority.
Definitely.
We don't have kids. Yeah. We're in our early 30s now, and the majority of our couple friends have kids. And it's been such an interesting journey to see how many maybe went in not with their eyes wide open. I say that with love, because I don't think parenting is something that you can truly understand the gravity of it until you're in it. But I definitely think that some of our friends went into it with rose-colored glasses on about the romanticism of creating a family and creating a little person and how things were going to be, their perception versus perhaps the reality. So I would love to know from your point of view and from what you've experienced yourself, but also with your clients, like, what are the things that people should be prepared for when they make that decision?
Yeah. So maybe it sounded rosy as I was talking. And I want to say, when I say it's an epic personal development journey, a journey has lots of bumps in the road. And being a mother, I might say, is one of the hardest things that I do in my life, but it's the most rewarding. So is it hard? It is really hard at times. At times, you might look in the mirror and think like, who am I? I don't even know who that is. Is this who I want to be? And now, as you said, there's no way to go back. But I think that another thing that our culture tells us, hard is not bad. The fact that things are hard or difficult at the time, it doesn't mean that I'm doomed. It means that there's place for growth. It means that there's where to go from here. So is it hard? Yes, there are times that it is hard. And it's important to know that before going in. And just like I talk to my doula clients about before birth of, you're going to have this beautiful birth, and then you have this creature that you're holding. And what do you do with it? Like, what do you do with it? How do you look at it? Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard on the
Try and keep it alive.
I remember leaving the hospital with my first baby. When in the hospital, you're not allowed to hold the baby when you're walking around. And like, it's a very contained atmosphere. And then they're like, okay, you could leave. And I was like looking at her and looking at my husband, like, we leave? And what do we do? Like, they're giving us this baby to take care of. What do we do with her? Like, who knows if we're really going to be good parents? And yeah, it's a scary journey. But so what we should prepare ourselves, I think, is also that mindset change of hard is not bad. And hard is an invitation for growth. And it's an invitation to dive deep into who I am and to who my husband is and to who my baby is, and to really learn how to connect on a deeper level. That's what challenges are. I think that when a mother is before birth, as I like to divide everything into like mind, body, and soul. Your mind, body, and soul are going to change. They're going to change, and change sometimes is uncomfortable. Change sometimes is difficult. Does it mean it's bad? No, it means that it's a place for growth. And I think that really it starts with the mindset. And then, of course, there's also the planning, the physical, technical, really practical planning of learning how to build my life in a way that it's going to be able to maintain my needs, my husband's needs, my baby's needs, in order for us to really be able to have a connected and happy and nurtured mind, body, and soul. So there's the mindset aspect, and then there's the really practical about, okay, how are we going to plan for your life to be able to maintain you? Because also, we know in relationships, and it's with any relationship, the first step is that I'm a happy person. If I'm not happy, our really hard patch that we went through, the first thing that I learned was if I'm not happy, I can't expect my relationship to be happy. So if as a mother, I'm feeling like I'm completely soul sucked, I'm sucked of my energy, of everything, then how can I show up in a relationship? But if I build my life around what my needs are and what are the things that I need in order to nurture myself, then I'll be able to also nurture my relationship and my parenting and my home and everything around.
Yeah, I really love that. And you mentioned a couple of times that you in your own relationship have used parenting to really strengthen your relationship. So how can others take that same approach to using parenting as a way to strengthen their relationship?
Well, I think that I actually have a podcast episode that's all about how childbirth is really a really great introduction to parenting and a relationship as a parent, and how everything that we need for an empowered childbirth is what we need for an empowered marriage. Well, I guess as a birth doula and a marriage coach, it kind of goes together. So there are so many things. I'll point you over to there to go and listen to that. But I think that just the understanding that let's take anger, for example. I had a time that I was really battling anger in my parenting. And I felt like such a failure. Like, this is exactly what I didn't want to do as a mother. And once I knew that this is a challenge that I have in my parenting, so I started diving deep into anger. And I learned that anger is kind of like a guest at your door. Just like in mindfulness, we talk about emotions, that they come to our door and they knock on our door and they say, hello, I'm coming to tell you something. And you could either push them out of the door and not open your door and say, I'm not angry, I'm not going to get angry. But they're going to keep on knocking at your door because they're there to teach you something. So I learned that anger is usually a guest that's coming to tell me that I have an unfulfilled need. And as a mother, it's so easy to get into a place that I have unfulfilled needs. Maybe I haven't taken a shower in I don't know how long. Maybe I try to take a shower.
haven't finished a cup of coffee while it's still been hot.
Exactly. That's a good one. Maybe, really, really simple needs that I don't have fulfilled. And I'm angry because my whole life feels overwhelming at the moment. And it's very easy for things to bubble out and just become really overwhelming. So I learned that anger for me is that I have an unmet need. So I would sit down with myself when I would feel that bubbling out, and even recognizing where you feel it in your body, because you could really feel it. I feel it in my hands, for example. When I start feeling angry, I feel this tickling in my hands, and you start learning to recognize those guests that are coming and knocking at your door. And then in my relationship, when I would get angry at my husband, I would ask myself that same question. Wait a minute, where in my relationship am I having this unmet need? And every time it might be a different need, but it's such an invitation inside in order for you to be able to get to know yourself and get to be able to create these relationships that are full of deep connection, because they come from a place of really recognizing inside and being able to bring it out.
Aliza, I love that you've said that. You're on the Date Forever podcast, and we talk about this idea of dating yourself and your chosen person forever. But that dating yourself thing is not just about going out for a coffee on your own and you're spending time in your own company, but it's about really getting to know yourself, and that going a little bit deeper on what are the emotions that I feel? How on earth are you going to be able to articulate to another person what it is that you're experiencing if you can't label your own emotion? And I'm not talking happy, sad, angry, fearful, go deeper. Are you feeling vulnerable? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you feeling frustrated, fatigued? I think the literacy of our own emotions is not something that we're actively taught. So digging into that and like you said, what does anger feel like in your body? And the way that you feel anger and the way that I feel anger and the way that Nath feels anger is probably completely different. But really getting to know yourself and what that is and where it's coming from, and then not shying away from it, but leaning into it and getting curious about yourself and that's interesting. Why did I respond like that? What's really going on here? So thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, I think I feel that in my hands too. It's that tense kind of feeling. Yeah.
I know that something that's helped us is, I'm not sure what the name of it is, but there's basically an emotions wheel or a feelings wheel or something. And it has the initial, the high level emotions, but then it breaks out further and further into the much more minute, kind of more granular emotions. And quite often, you might just think, I'm angry or something, but then this wheel is a really good tool to actually be able to dive deeper into what you're actually feeling, or to be able to pinpoint what that real emotion is that you're actually feeling at any one time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also motherhood or parenthood, it's like a whole new language. So we might know what I feel before having a kid. And then afterwards, my anger might come out in a whole different way. And it's really like learning a new language. And as someone who had to learn 2 new languages in my life, it's really frustrating in the beginning. And in the beginning, you feel like you sound really stupid when you're talking and it's really frustrating and you don't understand what the other person's saying and you feel like you can't express your own self. And parenting is exactly that. It's learning a new language, and my anger might look different. My happiness might look different. The things that I need might look different. And it's really giving yourself the time and the grace to learn that new language and to acquire it and to learn to love it.
So from that, what are the things that you do or the practices that you have to keep that relationship with yourself fueled up?
With myself. So I like to talk on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly kind of thing. So in my own relationship and also with my husband relationship and also with my children, actually. So what I try to do daily is, you said, have a hot cup of coffee. So I actually don't drink coffee, but I like to drink like an organic chocolate milk that I make for myself. And I know
that sounds delicious.
So I know that if I need like my recharge time, so I'm going to heat up the water, and I know that I have to have that time to drink it hot. I can't drink it once it gets cold. Like, that's my time that I'm going to sit down at the table. Maybe I'll read something at that time. Sometimes I have to gulp it down because the kids might be in the room fighting or whatever. But sometimes I'm able to just sit and sip it. And that's my like daily time. Then weekly, I try to get out in nature. Nature for me is like everything. Nature for me gives me so much energy, and like, I love being in the nature. And then that's how I like break it up. Those are my 2 main ones. Then I have my monthly practice and a yearly thing that I try to do for myself. So I also encourage my clients to also break it down like that and make it really simple. Something that I do daily to connect to my husband, something that I do weekly, something that I do monthly, and something that I do yearly. You know, we like to sometimes give like this, something that prescribe every relationship with a date night. And for some people, date night might not really work so well. And that's okay. But just make sure that you have your something that's daily, weekly, and monthly that you're doing in order to connect to each other. And once you have children, usually it's going to be simplify everything that you did until now, but make sure that you have those times and those moments of intention of connection.
Really love that.
Yeah.
So moving to your romantic relationship. So what do the 2 of you do to really keep your romantic relationship fueled up?
So what we do today is different than what we did like last month, because things change.
Now you've got 5.
Now I have 5, and now I have a newborn, and now so things change. But I'll give an example of simplifying, and also something that I like calling bundle up. In motherhood, you have so many new or parenthood. Sorry, I'm just used to talking to mothers, so I'm using motherhood, but of course I'm talking about parenting. So in parenting, we have so many things that we add to our to-do list. So instead of just making it another thing that you have to do on your to-do list to connect to your husband, in addition to folding the laundry and doing the dishes and making lunches for tomorrow. And so try and find something that you could bundle up together. So for example, before I had my baby, the only time that we had together during the day that was like completely clear of anything was 20 minutes in the morning, that usually I was still taking the kids to school. So what we decided to do was that my husband was going to join me in the car and take the kids to school. And then we had that ride of 20 minutes, a half hour, that it was the only time that we could find in the day at that time that we could be together. So, okay, maybe it's not going out to a cafe and it's not going on this nice walk at the beach, but that was the time of connection that we could find at that season of time. So we really tried daily to have some kind of messaging going on. We daily also try to sit down at the end of the day and have a cup of tea together. And like I said, with my drinking my chocolate, my hot chocolate. So you sit down until you finish the cup of tea. And again, it gives you that flow, the ability to flow, that sometimes it's going to be short and sometimes you can really take as long as you want, but give yourself the grace to have that flow. And then we have weekly time that we try and go out, which of course we try to go into nature. As I said, we try and go on a hike, on a whatever. And again, just this week, we were going to go out on a hike and we were planning this like farther place to go. And then my daughter forgot her lunch at home. So there goes at least an hour of our time that we were going to have. And then we weren't even sure if we were going to have enough time to go there. And we decided, even if it's not perfect, we are going to do it. And we are going to go out. And we had an hour in the end and not a lot of time, but we still got out and we went somewhere else. And to just be able to prioritize that, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It might be not as beautiful as you picture it, but make sure that you have that daily, weekly, monthly time to connect.
Amazing.
Yeah. I really like Nathan and I call it net, so no extra time, like the jumping in the car and that was an activity that you had to do anyway. So how can you make that no extra time, quality time? Exactly. Yeah. So for Nathan and I, that's often like one of us has to walk the dog. So often let's walk the dog together. Then we get to do that together. Yeah. But it doesn't take any extra time overall. Yeah.
I actually once had a client who they decided that whenever the garbage needed to be taken out, they were going to do it together. They were just going to walk together to the dumpster. Doesn't matter what was going on. The kids are eating dinner, whatever. The garbage needs to be taken out. And they would get up and leave the house and go take the garbage out together. And even though it's 2 minutes in the middle of the day, you know that that's your special time that you go out and you could be together.
Yeah.
Whatever works, right?
Exactly. And go with the flow of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Hey, so thank you so much for joining us. What I would love to know, is there like one or two final top tips, things that you would like to share for couples to keep their relationship fueled up?
So many times whenever somebody says, your top tip, what's your best thing? And I feel like with marriage, so many times it's things that we know and we just need the reminders. So it's not really like, give me something that I've never heard before. Sometimes it's just like, okay, what is it that I need to remember? I could give you, like obscure things, but I think that number one, in order to renew my marriage all the time and to be in a constant state of renewal, I need to renew myself. So if you want there to be new things to talk about, I have clients that come to me and they say, there's nothing for us to talk about. Like we talk about the kids, and when we stop talking about the kids, there's nothing else there. Well, what in your life is not about the kids, not about the marriage, not about your job, not about what are you renewing in yourself that then can bring renewal to your relationship? So that's the first tip I'll give, is constant renewal for yourself, constant rejuvenation, and like feel like you yourself are in this adventure of life. And then also your relationship is going to be a fun adventure. And the second tip I'm going to say is really cliche, but it's what I hear the most from couples, is to just really prioritize, the time together and the relationship that you have. Because I believe that a good relationship is the best gift that you could give to your children. And it's the best gift that you could give to the world. And I believe that our relationships, as cliche as it sounds, it really is the most valuable thing that we have. So really prioritize it. And just like if I had a meeting with my boss, I wouldn't cancel it for something. So if you have a meeting with your partner, don't cancel it. We need to prioritize our relationships. And it's so easy for it to get lost in the day-to-day grind. And it's so easy for us to think that other things are more important momentarily. But in the end, the most important thing that we have is our relationship. And I also believe that the biggest gift that you could give to your children is a loving, connected relationship, and really know how to prioritize it. And when I prioritize it, I also see that everything, as I said, is really an invitation to growth, and really see our relationship as something that's inviting me to change who I am in order to be able to make it better. And really believe that relationships are the most beautiful thing. And if something in your relationship is not working, seek help. Find a way to change it. There's no reason to feel discomfort in your relationship. There's no reason. Usually people think there's no more love, and it's so easy in our day to be, I kind of call us the disposable generation. Everything we have in life is kind of disposable. We use disposable utensils. We have phones that are built to be good only for 2 years, and then we throw them out. And we're only in this generation, or I call the microwave generation, that we think that everything has to happen within 30 seconds. You want to eat dinner, so take out a frozen something, put it in, and in 30 seconds, there you go. So what happens? We are teaching our beings that we don't have patience for processes. We don't have patience for things to go through their natural path and way that they have to go through. And we have to really teach ourselves that relationships, they're beautiful, but it teaches us really from the beginning that life is a process, and there are ups and there are downs, and they're good and they're bad sometimes. And that's okay. And that's part of life. And when we want something to be really important in our lives, we have to work on it. But please don't ever think that your relationship has to be bad or that something is doomed in your relationship. So find help and discomfort in any part of your relationship, whether it's communication, whether it's the sex, whether it's just being able to have fun together. There shouldn't be discomfort. There should be fun and love and connection.
Can't echo that enough. If you were sick, you would go and see a doctor. So do that for your relationship. Take care of it. And sometimes if you were able to solve it with the two of you, you would have solved it already. It's okay to need third-party help for all kinds of things. So thank you for sharing that. And it's a big part of this show is like we want to destigmatize that asking for help. Like, at what point were you taught how to have a great relationship? You probably weren't. So why do you have an expectation that you should just innately have these skills?
Yeah,
so
going to be an expert.
Yeah, they're things to be built. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been really nice conversation. To honor you and to say thank you, we've provided a month's worth of early childcare education to a classroom in Kenya. So this project is looked after. This has been made possible by our giving partner, Buy One, Give One. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Thank you so much. I love that. That made me so happy seeing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No worries. So Aliza, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about what you do, how should they do that?
Yeah. So you could find me either on Instagram at mama.marriage.coach, or you could find me at my website, alizasaid.com. You could download, which is good for parents, or even if you're not a parent, you could download their 50 free date nights that I have there that you could do at home. And yeah, you could find me in all those places. And I'm happy to connect. I always say on podcast interviews that I'm really out there because I'm so passionate to make relationships beautiful. So even if, there's something that you're challenged with right now at this moment, send me a DM and I'm happy to just brainstorm ideas on how to make things better from right now and today. So feel free to reach out for any kind of help that you might need.
Amazing.
Love that. So I have downloaded the 50 things. I totally recommend. Go have a little look, because sometimes it's not like you just get a bit creatively stumped. So print it out, stick it up on the wall, stick it on the fridge or something, and remind yourself that creating opportunities or experiences or immersive moments of connection doesn't have to be hard work. And it can be
expensive.
Yeah. It can be fun.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.